Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Caroline Slater.
And I'm her brother Sean.
And today we are talking about minute 28. It starts with Miles seeing the panel that Spider-Man talked about earlier, and ending with Kingpin killing Spider-Man.
What did you end up naming this minute?
I named it They're Gone.
That's a very good name.
Yeah.
It's got that double meaning to it.
Yeah. So what notes did you start with this?
I started with the really tiny light all the way up there. I love just I think this sort of his facial expressions here really shows just like how he's kind of almost resigned to being Spider-Man now.
Yeah.
Like he's just got this like confused look as like he's trying to find it. He sees the light and it's just like,
oh man.
Okay, I gotta get up there now.
Yeah, it's like, oh man. It's a great moment from the animators that they do a great job of showing what Miles is thinking without having any kind of voiceover or text box or anything.
Yeah.
Like, you can just tell. I also feel the need to point out that I wrote in my notes specifically, Miles sees panel. It's far.
Yeah, I like how it is just like we saw it earlier with when Peter was originally trying to go plug in the doohickey into it,
mm-hmm.
and it it's a decent sized panel. It's bigger than his head.
Yeah.
And then you look at it from here and it's so tiny.
It's like, oh, I think I see it. I did want to ask you, and this might be just me looking too far into it, but do you think it might be like a metaphor for Miles's journey?
I mean, if you ask an English teacher, it's a metaphor for his
As an English
journey
teacher, this is definitely
far,
symbolic.
and how far his ultimate destination is away. But yeah, I think you could definitely see like you could see it as a, hey, this isn't gonna be an easy thing for him to do. It's not like he's got to pop over, plug it in, head on out.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a bit of effort, and I think the like interruption that happens when Kingpin walks up to him, or not to him, to Peter, like when he hears them showing up, is could be seen as that, like, okay, he's gonna take a roundabout way to get back here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought it was a very cool, whether they intended it or not, way to show that like Miles has a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely. It's, you could, when you think of like the what is it, the death of the author,
mm-hmm.
Of like once a piece is out in the world, the author really doesn't have any input on what its meaning is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it was something that they were intentionally like being this is here to symbolize his journey. There's a lot of things could be pointed to with like the the colors earlier of the two of Peter and Miles is like spider sense is syncing up.
Yeah.
That's very a deliberate symbolism, but this is a non-deliberate symbolism that it's definitely an interpretation that you don't really have to stretch, like the lampshade is blue because they're sad. I liked speaking of the Kingpin's interruption, I liked how we see it from like, we see a lot of it from these like hidden points of view, and like Miles's
mm-hmm.
point of view initially, where you see him kind of like crawl up and they pretty much essentially shrink the frame of what we're watching Kingpin through, because they have the girders blocking off parts of it, and so you feel very detached from him talking to Tombstone and the scientist, and telling them to get moving.
Is that his bodyguard's name?
Yeah, Tombstone. He's another villain.
I figured that was his name, but like I didn't bring it up in my notes. But what was I calling him last night in my head? He was.
Was it Frankenstein? He
no,
looked very much like Frankenstein.
He does look like Frankenstein. No, it was the butler from Addams Family, Lurch.
Oh, yeah. He's like there is one of the recent storylines in Miles's comic. They do like it revolves around Tombstone kidnapping powered kids, or at least kidnapping kids and like giving them suits to make them powered, to like sell them off to the highest bidder kind of thing. He's a bit scarier in there than he is in this movie. This movie he's just kind of like there.
He's just kind of a background bodyguard character.
Yeah, and they don't really have him do too much, but
so. Just curious, like this minute doesn't really focus on it, but since we brought him up, I'm just very curious. In the comics, is he also Kingpin's bodyguard, or is he just a character?
I'm not sure. Right now in the comics, like Kingpin is, I think, mayor of New York or something. So like,
of course
he's one of the like heads of a gang kind of thing, and so he might be like working for Kingpin under the table kind of thing, but. There, at least in that story arc, there wasn't an explicit relationship between the two.
Okay, I was just curious.
I'm not sure how they're related outside of
that storyline.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the minute and to Kingpin, you brought up these lines. I want to talk very briefly about them because I mean they're pretty obvious, but I think it's a very cool sort of foreshadowing. Is not the right word, but sort of just kind of telling the audience like, hey, you know. Obviously, we saw how serious the test was, but the first line we hear from Kingpin after Miles hides is, we're done with tests.
Yeah.
Get that thing ready to go again, and soon. And so you get a time crunch now.
Yeah, it's not exactly clear who he's talking to in these parts either, because he says, like, Tombstone, we're done with the tests, and then... get that thing ready to go again, but like he's facing the scientist as he's saying that.
I did appreciate the line after that.
Oh yeah,
these guys are weak, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
I mean they are compared to him, but that's still.
Yeah, and then they go back and forth with their punning a little bit, which I always love. The like how Spider-Man's how business, and he's just like booming.
Yeah.
And I love Spider-Man just like nice.
Nice, yeah. There does seem to be a sort of you can tell that they've been there a long time, that they can be quippy with each other.
Yeah, like he Kingpin's not put off by like Spider-Man's quippiness.
No, like he just serves it right back.
Yeah. The next big note I had though was when he takes off the mask.
The unmasking of Peter.
Yeah.
The first thing I wrote down. Yeah, that's a no-no. And I'm like, really? That's your first thought? When I'm watching it now, the first time I watched it, I think I let out an audible gasp, actually.
Yeah.
The very first time, I'm like, it's a very... intense isn't the right word, and I don't think shocking is the right word, but it almost catches you off guard.
It's unexpected.
Yeah, like I really didn't
usually expect them to just like kill him, and then that's it or something. But I'm not exactly sure how, in the like Ultimates universe, I don't remember how Peter dies. I know at that point though he's already like unmasked.
Yeah.
He revealed his identity earlier.
He pulled an Iron Man.
But the thing I laughed about was I had just recently... I'm reading through Miles's Ultimate run, like his original run, and at one point the 616 Peter travels into his universe, so this is after like Miles's Peter dies, and then like another Peter shows up, and he doesn't know that he switched universes either.
Oh my gosh.
And then suddenly like... Yeah, and then suddenly, like, Miles shows up, so there's this other guy dressed as a Spider-Man, and, like, they start fighting each other, and the thing they do is both of them try to take each other's masks off, and they're both, like, Peter says something very, very similar to, like, that's a no-no, like, as Miles tries to take his mask off initially, And then like Peter manages to take Miles's mask off, and he's like, "Dude, we're in like they fall down or go through public or something. Like, they'll see me. Like, we're in public because Miles's identity isn't revealed." So
Yeah.
it was really funny, and to be just like I'm like, oh, I just had a similar thing where they're like, nope, can't take each other's masks off. So now that sidebar's done.
I really like the way this scene is shot. It's... First off, they make Kingpin massive.
Yeah, like he doesn't even fit in the frame.
No.
Which is great.
Yeah, it really is. But it definitely makes him more menacing, if that's like possible. Obviously it is. But it makes him very menacing. But I also particularly like the line where Peter is talking about how you can't... or that it's gonna blow a black hole underneath Brooklyn machine. And it's a very like distant shot. It's very muffled. It almost gives this sense of like hopeless reasoning that Peter's trying to do.
Yeah, is that shot one from Miles's point of view?
It looks like it might be, but I couldn't tell for sure.
Yeah, I like how they do a really good job of just like kind of like softening his face. He doesn't look like angry, like I don't know, he just looks kind of like pleady almost.
Yeah.
Like he's pleading with him like, don't do this. This will also like destroy your home too, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Kingpin's next line sort of is like a, hey, this is, we're going to hint at what the real reason is, where he says it's not always about the money.
Yeah, Peter's like, it can't be worth the risk, and Kingpin responds, it's not always about the money, Spider-Man.
And then he's like, you could kind of see how Peter's mental calculations are going on here, because at first he's like, okay, we're going to go with the black hole bit. Okay, that didn't work. And then so he just jumps to like, I know what you're doing. Like I saw.
Well, before he does that, I like this. I want to bring up this moment because it's a very cool, like panicky moment on his part. So Prowler starts walking up, and first thing I want to point out is that when they're showing Prowler's claw, I'm just going to call them claws. I know they're more gloves, but I'm going to call them claws.
Yeah, his claws.
When his claw and he starts walking forward, I don't know if you caught this, but at 38 seconds, there's a very muffled version of the Prowler theme.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of it, and I never caught that before, but I thought that was just such a very neat touch.
Yeah, they use it like a bunch of places.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, something's about to happen soon, so we'll like, prep, we're gonna soft lob this to you, and be like, hey, remember that Prowler dude? Here he is. Yeah, I think that's actually one of my favorite like motifs they use is the muffled Prowler, and just like it's the like, hey, this isn't him like doing something very like boisterous, but it's just like, hey, this is like, when you have the the gangster make the like innuendo about like, I'd hate for you to have to take a swim later tonight, kind of thing, and it's sort of him doing that of just a like, soft threat where like, I'm not going to overtly say anything, but
like you can tell he's about to do something, and what backs this up is Peter looks over Prowler and then kind of looks back to Kingpin and like panically says, don't you want to see what I saw in there, or don't you want to know what I saw in there?
Yeah, and like that's the that kind of like calculations that I was talking about. Yeah, he goes from, okay, let's go this one way, that didn't work. Okay, we'll go like a bit more towards it, and then I do love though they do the trope of like say something to get the like villain to stop.
Yeah.
But wait. And it's like, okay, I'll wait.
Like, wait a second. It's like, okay, hold on.
Although I do love the idea that like, not the idea, but like the insinuation that Prowler is just gonna ice him right there,
right then and
without
there,
like Kingpin like saying anything. Like Kingpin, he just would be like, okay, time to hurt him, and it wouldn't have been like on Kingpin's command.
Yeah, like maybe. It just kind of would have happened, but he would have just been like, well, that happens. But I do appreciate that they did this because I think it makes this next moment
more poignant.
Yeah, more poignant.
I like how Spider-Man's just trying to be like you can tell he's sort of speaking from the heart there, because of how like he lost his Uncle Ben, so he knows what Kingpin's going through. In that, at least I could see Peter seeing like even though Kingpin's a bad guy, it was like because of his own actions / inaction that caused the death of his loved ones. That then like that's sort of what happened, and so Peter knows how that felt, or knows what that felt like, and so you can really like feel the like, hey, it's what you're trying to do, like it's just not gonna work. Don't not get over it, but like
this is not the way. This is not the way to deal with it.
Yeah,
it does. And Kingpin's, first off, in a great example of someone being in denial about it.
Yeah, just how it like he's like, it's not gonna work. He's like, nope, smash.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing. Like that, the way they showed Kingpin's anger.
Actually, yeah, I was gonna say, wouldn't he be in the angry stage?
It's a bit of a combination of the two, because he's in denial about never getting them back.
Yeah.
And then so when someone faces, like Peter points out that, look, it's just not going to happen, it just makes him enraged because he's in that much denial about it.
Yeah.
But that scene, I remember the first time I saw that scene. I'm going to talk a lot about the first time I saw this movie in these next few minutes, just because we're getting to what I call the get the tissues ready, where the next few minutes, every time I have seen the movie, I have cried. And this one is not one of them, but it still makes my heart jump every time I see that wind-up of Kingpin, and there's just that flash of that very comic, and you can tell it's anger, and that smash down, and then just silence.
Yeah, the thing I liked about this was it's a very violent death. Like,
it really is.
Yeah, and it's also like, this will sound very weird, but it's nice to see the villain do that for once.
Right?
Usually
No,
it's just like, like it's not nice to see him die.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
There's always that threat of like, oh yeah, the villain's gonna kill the hero, and it's nice to see them actually like kill a big named hero. Usually it's just like, oh, the girlfriend will get fridged or something, but this time Peter got to get fridged.
This one is a little bit of a critique with not all kids movies, but I feel like some more recent kids movies. Like I think this is very much in the realm of like, I don't know, like I kind of think of like Scar, but even then I don't think it's the same way. Like this is a full on, this is in Kingpin's hands. Like he doesn't send it off to, I think the reason I'm thinking Scar is because it's like, oh, well he killed Mufasa, but I'm like, he just threw Mufasa into the wildebeest. The wildebeest killed Mufasa.
Yeah.
Like
his
but
was
like,
and his action led to
like he used something else to end up getting the kill. So like yes, he did kill Mufasa, but it's not like he flat out like killed Mufasa in a battle. Where here Kingpin, that just was the first example that came to mind.
Kind of similar to like in Star Wars, either the like Qui-Gon Darth Maul fight, or even like the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight in both 3 and in 4. Like it's similar to those where the villain / good guy, I guess, in the case of 3, but like so I guess it's more similar to like the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight in 4, where
they're doing it themselves,
directly themselves, but it's like those weren't really like violent, whereas this one's like, I know violence happened, but they weren't extremely violent acts in the way that this one is just him crushing him.
And this one isn't exactly the same, but I did, when I saw the remake of Aladdin, One thing I really kind of appreciated them doing was with Jafar, they have a scene where he just straight up picks up a guy and throws him down a well. And I'm like, oh my gosh!
Him?
Like, huh?
Does he yell what nation state they're in when he does that?
No.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't remember that on the animated version. And like, yeah, you get this sense that like Jafar or like these, like you get the feeling that they actually kill someone, but they never actually do it. They do it through something else.
Yeah.
This is really the first time I'm like, oh wow, they show that Kingpin is not afraid to get his hands dirty, which makes him so much more terrifying.
And the other thing I liked about this one too was they didn't show it. Like they didn't show the contact, but they also didn't have to.
Yeah.
And like I have a bit of an issue with a lot of like games and movies and kind of TV shows these days, and I feel like a lot of times they're in like a it feels like they're trying to be edgy teenagers sort of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, we got to show the blow, and like Deadpool can kind of like slip into this sometimes, where it's just like it feels like violence for violence sake, and like, oh, we're just gonna show the blood everywhere because that's
cool.
And you don't like always have to show that.
No.
And like this one, it's bothersome when they like. It's clearly like if they wouldn't move the camera, it would show it, but then they like pan away, and sometimes that's bothersome. But like this one, they frame it very well.
They very cleverly get around even just a rating of this. Like a ratings problem with this, in the sense that the way they cut away, but you still get the impact and the terror of it, is that they cut to Miles' face.
Yeah.
And the sheer horror, I specifically wrote down at 56 seconds, like, it is complete and utter terror in Miles' face.
Yeah, and shock.
And it's shock, it's horror, it's terror. Like, he is going through so many emotions. At one point I'm like, this boy's gonna throw up after what he saw. But like when you think about it, it's like he just saw a superhero, someone he clearly has like admired. Well, I don't know if admired is the right word, but like has like
definitely he definitely admires him and looks up to him.
Yeah, as getting crushed to death. Yeah. And it's a very clever way, and not like a cheap way, like some, like you were saying, like some movies or games go where they'll cut away and you'll just hear a scream not even cut or something. Away,
but it's when they like, it's clearly like you can see, like both people are clearly in frame, and then like as this killing blow is coming down, they just pan the camera up, or pan the camera over or something. Whereas this one, like they don't. It's never framed in such a way where that happens, where it's always you're seeing from like kind of in front of where Peter is, looking at Kingpin, and then when he swings down, it cuts to Miles, and then it cuts back to his back, and so there's no like panning of the camera to try to like
hide it.
Obfuscate the action, but it's just like, no, this is where you were looking from. This is all you get to see. Yeah. It's not like you looked away.
Yeah, and even going off of that, like when they even show Peter's face, you really only see him from like the shoulders up. We don't get a full view of his torso unless it's being covered by Kingpin. So with those clever techniques and then the cutting of the way, it doesn't feel like, oh, they're trying to hide something. It definitely feels like a logical flow. The other thing I also love is that, like, by cutting to Miles, you realize how much he's seeing. Like, you can't then justify as like, well, Miles didn't actually see it. Like, he covered his eyes, or he was hidden. He couldn't see it. Like, they clearly show he was watching. He saw everything.
Yeah.
And it definitely just, I think that's a big driving moment for Miles. This poor kid.
Yeah.
This poor kid.
I mean, these next couple of minutes are very hard on him, and you definitely
so hard on him.
In a couple minutes, find out how hard.
Yeah, well, and like
it is.
To quote the future, if I may quote Spider Noir in the future, this is a hardcore backstory.
Yeah.
When you really think about everything Miles has gone through, it's like, oh my gosh, how is he not, like, just absolutely depressed? How has he been able to, like, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's a pretty hardcore backstory for a normal person. It's kind of on par for
Spider-Man
superhero
no,
origins.
That's true. I'm tearing up thinking of the scene because I know I'm gonna cry later.
I just have some animation points that I want to touch on as my last notes.
Go for it.
The first thing is that all of the lines on their faces, like the light lines they put across their faces, is like part of the shadowing and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That was all done by hand on top of the CG performances and whatnot. So like they didn't they had to go back through, and once all of this was like rendered, they went back over and hand drew those. Like I don't think they hand drew like each individual line,
still,
but they had to go back through and like frame by frame go through and put where the lines were.
Oh, that's a process.
And yeah, they were saying it was very slow. They were able to get about a second done of it per week. Whereas like normal pace for the animation was about 4 seconds per week.
Yeah.
So I think I remember in the animators commentary they were talking about how like tricky it was for some of them because they're like for some of the hand drawn bits,
mm-hmm.
because it's so out of practice and like they're just not used to doing it
mm-hmm.
because they like it was part of one of their intro classes and then they moved on to like how it's actually done these days. The other thing they mentioned about this bit was for Prowler.
Mm-hmm.
One of the animators was talking about how they were worried about how he would turn out. Like they weren't sure if he would be intimidating enough because he's got such big like hands and feet, and his costumes could be like
kind of goofy,
easily become very silly, but they were worried that he would turn out silly and just like not really look intimidating enough. And then this scene was when like once they did all the lighting and then the upcoming bit,
mm-hmm.
they were like, oh no, yeah, he can be
he's scary.
They got this down. Once you add like all the light effects and the sound effects, it definitely makes him much scarier.
He's almost scarier than Kingpin. I think really what kind of like puts him over the edge is that, and this is going ahead a little bit and we can talk more about it later, is that he's pretty much without hesitation starts chasing Miles, who's a kid.
Yeah, I
like,
think
he
doesn't really know that though.
No, but like even in later minutes, it's like without hesitation, just goes after this. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think like the difference between him and Kingpin is like menacing,
mm-hmm.
whereas Prowler is like scary.
Prowler's
the thing in the dark that that lives under the bed, whereas Kingpin's.
It's funny you bring that up, and I'll go more into this in the next minute, but just quick hint, sort of. I actually, in the next minute, compare Prowler to Freddy Krueger. And we'll get to that in the next minute, because that's where a lot of those parallels came up to me when I was taking notes.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good teaser for, like you said, next minute. Is there anything else you have?
Not really. We covered everything I wanted to, and we got on a few rants, so...
Wonderful.
Always a good episode when that happens, I think.
Yeah. Wonderful. And thank you for joining us this week. Join us... well, not this week. Thank you for joining us this minute. And join us on Wednesday as we watch minute 29 to see... the beginning of the fallout of Kingpin's actions.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.